There are two kinds of promises in every family. The ones that are spoken out loud and the ones that are written where no one thinks to look. Most parents believe the first kind is what matters. They are wrong. My name is Lila Carter. I turned 18 on a Thursday. By 8:12 the next morning, my stepfather was sliding a leather folder across our kitchen table like it was a birthday gift. He smiled. He said, "Sweetheart, it's time we got responsible about your future." My hands didn't move, because I already knew what was inside. Before I take you into that kitchen, hit like and subscribe. Drop your city and your local time in the comments. I read every one. Let me take you back. 6 months before that morning, I learned the difference between being quiet and being invisible. It was late September, the kind of evening where the sky turns gray before dinner and the porch light flickers on without asking. I was in my room, sitting cross-legged on the floor, sorting through a box I hadn't touched in years. It was my dad's box. Cherry wood, worn smooth on the edges. He'd given it to me when I was 15. Said it was for things that matter later. I hadn't understood what that meant back then. I understood it now. Inside was exactly how I'd left it, a baseball ticket stub from a game we went to together, a Polaroid of us at the lake, and something I didn't remember. A sealed envelope. My name written across the front in his handwriting. Lila. Just that. No flourish. No extra words. I stared at it longer than I want to admit. Then I noticed something else. In the bottom corner, smaller, almost like he didn't want anyone else to see. Open if anything ever feels wrong with Mom. My chest tightened. My dad had been gone for 3 years, heart attack, sudden, no warning. One morning he was making pancakes, and by evening there was a priest in our living room. My mother cried hard for 5 days. On day 6, she started repainting the kitchen. On day 10, she said we needed a fresh start. On day 42, she introduced me to Richard Hale. By the end of the year, he was living in our house. By the next, he was calling it his. I held the envelope between my fingers. I didn't open it. Not yet. Downstairs, I heard voices. Low. Controlled. Richard's voice carried in a way that always sounded calm and irritated at the same time. My mother's voice followed, soft, careful, like she was always trying to smooth something over. Paper shifted. Drawers opened. A chair scraped. I put the envelope back in the box, closed the lid. I told myself it meant nothing. I went downstairs. I poured a glass of water. I didn't ask why there were documents spread across the kitchen table at 9:47 p.m. I didn't ask why my mother stopped talking the second I walked in. I didn't ask why Richard's hand moved too quickly to cover a page. I just said, "Hey." My mother smiled too fast. "Hi, honey. You want tea?" I shook my head. I drank my water. I went back upstairs. That was the moment I stopped being a daughter who didn't notice things. I just didn't let anyone know. Growing up in our house meant learning what earned attention and what cost you for it. Crying was inconvenient. Anger was disrespect. Excitement was childish. Questions were dangerous. So I learned to stay even. Flat, quiet. My mom called it maturity. Richard called it easy. But quiet doesn't mean empty. Quiet means you're collecting. And I was very, very good at collecting. 3 weeks later, I opened the envelope. I didn't do it at home. I took it to Cedar Park, sat on a bench under a tree that had already started losing its leaves, and opened it there. The paper inside was folded twice. My dad's handwriting filled the page. Lila, if you're reading this, then something didn't sit right in your chest and you trusted that feeling. I'm proud of you for that. There are things I couldn't say out loud while I was here. Not because I didn't trust you, but because I didn't want to put you in the middle of something you were too young to carry. But you're not too young anymore. There's money set aside for you. Not in your mother's control. Not in anyone's control, except yours when you turn 18. It's protected. Or it's supposed to be. If anything feels off, call Marcus Reed. He's been my attorney for 25 years. He knows everything. Don't ignore your instincts. They're the one thing no one can take from you. I love you. Always. Dad. At the bottom of the page was a phone number. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully. Then I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing. Because something in my chest had already known. That letter didn't create the feeling. It confirmed it. I called the number. A receptionist answered. "Reed and Associates, how can I help you?" My voice didn't shake. "Hi, my name is Lila Carter. My father was Jonathan Carter. He told me to call Marcus Reed. There was a pause. Then, hold, please. A click. Then a man's voice. Warm, steady. Lila? I swallowed. Yes. I've been waiting for that call. That was the first moment I realized I wasn't imagining anything, and I wasn't alone. I've been waiting for that call. There was something in Marcus Reed's voice that didn't sound surprised. It sounded prepared. Like this moment had already been discussed somewhere I wasn't part of. I said my dad left me a letter. He said I know. Not I think. Not I assumed. I know. The air shifted. I said he mentioned money, a trust. Marcus didn't rush. That's correct. I looked out at the empty park. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. Leaves scraped against concrete. I said, can you explain it to me? He said, not over the phone. Not everything. Some things you should hear in person. A pause. Then can you come to Chicago next week? Chicago, 2 states away. I said, I can tell my mom it's a college visit. He said that would work. Then his voice lowered slightly. Lila, until we meet, don't change anything at home. I froze. He continued. Not your behavior, not your schedule, not your tone. If something is happening, and I believe it is, you being predictable is your advantage. My fingers tightened around the phone. Okay. And Lila? Yes. You did the right thing calling. That mattered more than I expected. The following Tuesday, I told my mom I had a college tour. She didn't ask many questions. That should have bothered me more than it did. Richard drove me to the bus station. He insisted. Said it was safer. His truck smelled like leather and something sharp. Aftershave or control, I could never tell the difference. Halfway there, he said, you've been quiet lately. I kept my eyes on the road ahead. Just school. He nodded once. Good. Quiet is good. Means you're focused. I didn't answer, because that wasn't what quiet meant. Not anymore. Marcus Reed's office was on the 14th floor of a glass building downtown. Clean lines, muted colors. The kind of place where everything looks calm and costs more than it should. He stood when I walked in, mid-60s. Silver hair, dark suit, kind eyes that didn't miss anything. Lila. He shook my hand like I mattered. That alone almost undid me. Sit. I sat. He didn't start with paperwork. He started with a question. What do you already suspect? I thought about that. Then I said, I think my mom and Richard are planning something with the money. He nodded slowly. That's a good instinct. Not dramatic. Not overreacting. Good instinct. He slid a folder across the desk. Not dramatically, just enough for me to reach it. Open it. I did. Inside were documents, typed, structured. Nice. The title caught my eye immediately. Carter Family Asset Alignment Agreement. My name was on the second line, Lila Ann Carter. My stomach dropped. Marcus said, this is a draft that was forwarded to us. I looked up. Forwarded? He nodded. Someone inside another firm was uncomfortable with what they were preparing. My fingers went cold. I turned the page. Clause after clause. Words I didn't fully understand, but enough to know what they were doing. Co-trusteeship assignment. Durable financial power of attorney. Asset consolidation into Hale Carter Holdings LLC. I stopped. LLC? Marcus said, your stepfather's company. Of course it was. I flipped another page. Signature line. My name printed neatly. Date, February 10. 2 months before my birthday, before I was legally an adult. I looked up. They wanted me to sign this before I turned 18. Marcus nodded, yes. So my mom could sign too. Yes, so they could control everything. He held my gaze. Yes, there it was. No softening, no sugarcoating, just truth. I leaned back in the chair. The room didn't spin. I didn't cry. I just understood. 4 months. 4 months of dinners. Of how was your day? Of we're so proud of you. 4 months of planning to take something that wasn't theirs. I said quietly, what happens if I don't sign? Marcus folded his hands. Then they have no legal access to your trust. And if I do? They gain control. Simple. Binary. Clear. I exhaled slowly. What do I do? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached for another document. This, he said, is your actual trust. Different title, Carter Legacy Trust, established by my father, irrevocable, protected. He tapped the page. Right now, this protects you. Then he tapped the other folder. That does not, I nodded. I want to keep mine. A small smile. I was hoping you'd say that. We spent the next 2 hours building something new. Not from scratch, from protection. Marcus explained everything like it was architecture. Not emotional, not personal, structural. You can keep your current trust, he said, or you can strengthen it. How? By removing any possible pressure points. That phrase stayed with me. Pressure points, places someone could push. We removed them. One by one, new trustee, independent, a corporate firm with no ties to my family, clear distribution rules, education, housing, health, no lump sum withdrawals, no external authority, no shared control, and most importantly, irrevocable. I said, that means I can't change it either. He nodded. Correct. I thought about that, about future me, about guilt, pressure, manipulation, about my mother crying, about Richard raising his voice, about family. I said, good. Marcus watched me carefully. Most people hesitate there. I'm not most people. No, he said. You're not. Before I left, he said something that stayed with me. Lila, they are counting on your hesitation. I nodded. They think you'll trust them. Yes, he paused. And they think you won't understand. That one landed deeper. I said, they're wrong. He smiled just slightly. Good. On the bus ride home, I stared out the window the entire time. Fields, highways, gas stations that all looked the same. I replayed everything. The documents, the dates, the signatures, the plan. It wasn't messy. It wasn't emotional. It was precise. That's what made it worse. When I got home, my mom was in the kitchen, cooking, smiling, like always. How was the visit? Good. What did you think of the campus? It felt right. She beamed. I'm so proud of you. Richard leaned against the counter. Smart girl. I nodded. Thanks. I sat down. She placed a plate in front of me. Chicken, rice, green beans, everything normal. Everything exactly the same. She said we should talk soon. About your future. There it was. I took a bite, chewed, swallowed. I'd like that. And I meant it. Just not for the reasons she thought. That night, I locked my door. I took out my dad's letter. I read it again. Then I whispered, I see it now. The morning of my 18th birthday didn't feel special. It felt scheduled. 7:18 a.m. I was already awake. Not because I was excited, because I didn't trust myself to oversleep. I got dressed slowly. Jeans, a soft gray sweater. My dad's watch on my wrist. I stood in front of the mirror for a moment. Quiet, I said out loud. I looked like her. The version of me they thought they understood. I kept it. The kitchen smelled like pancakes. Of course it did. My mom stood at the stove in her robe, humming something soft. Richard was at the table, already dressed, scrolling his phone. Everything was staged, not fake, just prepared. Happy birthday, sweetheart, my mom said, turning with a smile that landed perfectly. She hugged me, held it just a second too long. Richard nodded. 18. Big day. I sat down. A plate slid in front of me. 3 pancakes, butter melting slowly, syrup already poured, and next to my plate, a folder. Not hidden, not subtle. Waiting. I picked up my fork, took one bite, chewed, swallowed. Let them wait. My mom folded her hands. Lila, now that you're 18, there are a few things we should go over. Her voice was warm, practiced, safe. I nodded. Okay. She slid the folder toward me. It's nothing complicated, just some paperwork to make sure everything is handled properly, as a family. Richard added, just structure. I opened it. Same document, same title, same neat lines trying to look harmless. Carter Family Asset Alignment Agreement. My name, printed, placed, prepared. I turned the first page slowly. Read it. Actually read it. Not pretending, not skimming. Silence stretched. 30 seconds. A minute. 2. I flipped another page. Then another. My mom shifted in her seat. Richard tapped the table once. Leila, he said, you don't need to go through all of it. I didn't look up. I like to understand what I sign. My mom smiled tighter. It's just standard. I tapped a paragraph. This says partial control transfers to Hale Carter Holdings LLC. She blinked. That's just for efficiency. I looked up. When was that company created? A pause. Richard answered. Last year. I nodded slowly. November? Another pause. Too long. I turned the page. Tapped again. This line gives you financial power of attorney. My mom leaned forward. That's just in case something happens. It's protection. I said, for who? Silence. The kind that has weight. Richard's voice dropped. For you. I closed the folder. Carefully. Set my hands on top of it. Flat, steady. Can I call someone before I sign? My mom's smile froze. Who? I met her eyes. Our attorney. That word landed. Hard. Straightened. We don't need another lawyer. I tilted my head slightly. I'd feel better. My mom's voice sharpened just a fraction. Lila, this is a family matter. I nodded. Yes. Then I picked up my phone. It is. The screen lit up. Right on time. 8:12 a.m. Marcus Reed. I didn't rush. I let them see it. Richard said, don't answer that. My mom said, Lila, wait. I pressed accept. Put it on speaker. Set it down between the pancakes and the folder. "Good morning, Lila," Marcus said calmly. "Happy birthday." "Thank you," I said. "I'm here with my mom and Richard." A pause. Then, perfect timing. The air changed. My mom's hands tightened in her lap. Richard didn't move. Marcus continued. "I'd like to confirm something for you, Lila." "I'm listening." "Your trust restructuring was completed at 12:01 a.m. today." Silence. Not empty. Heavy. "Funds have been transferred," he continued. "Your assets are now held under a newly executed fully irrevocable trust." My mom's breath caught. Richard's chair scraped slightly against the floor. I didn't look at them. "Everything is protected," Marcus said. "No external party has access." My mom whispered, "What?" I said calmly, "I moved everything last night." Richard stood up. "What do you mean moved everything?" Marcus answered for me. "It means the funds originally intended for Miss Carter are no longer accessible under any previous or proposed agreements." Richard's voice rose. "This is ridiculous. She's a kid." Marcus didn't react. "She is a legal adult." My mom shook her head slowly. "Lila, you didn't need to do that." I finally looked at her. "I did." She swallowed. "You don't understand how complicated this is." "I do." Richard slammed his hand on the table. The plates rattled. "You went behind our backs?" I held his gaze. "You spent 4 months planning to go behind mine." That landed, hard. My mom's eyes filled. Real tears. But I had seen that before. Different reasons. Same pattern. "Lila," she said softly, "we were trying to help you." I nodded. "I know." A pause. Then, "I just didn't agree to your version of help." Marcus's voice cut in gently. "For the record, the document currently in front of Ms. Carter," I opened the folder again, "yes, is no longer enforceable." Richard had scoffed. "Of course it is." Marcus didn't raise his voice. "No, it is not." Silence. "Then that document was designed to be executed while Ms. Carter was still a minor, writ requiring parental co-signature." My mom went still. "Attempting to redirect a minor's assets under parental authority," Marcus continued, "is a serious fiduciary concern." Richard said, "You can't prove intent." Marcus paused. "Then the version I have is dated February 10th. Another pause. "And December 2nd and January 18th. 3 drafts, 3 months." My mom closed her eyes. "Just for a second." That was enough. I closed the folder, this time for good. "I'm keeping this," I said. Neither of them argued. That told me everything. My mom wiped her face. Her voice changed, lower, sharper. "You think you've won something?" I didn't answer. She leaned forward. "You've just destroyed your relationship with your family." I thought about that. Really thought about it. Then I said, "No," a pause. "You did that." Richard laughed once. Cold. "You're going to regret this." I stood up. Maybe I would, but not for the reason he thought. I picked up my phone. "Thank you, Marcus." "You're welcome, Lila." The line clicked off. I grabbed my jacket. My mom's voice followed me. "Where are you going?" I stopped at the door. Turned. Looked at her. For a second, just a second, I almost saw something real. Something underneath everything else. But it was gone too fast. "I'm going somewhere quiet," I said, and I left. Outside, the air was cold, clean, honest. For the first time in a long time. In it, I could breathe without thinking about it. I stayed with a friend that night, then another. Then, 2 weeks later, I moved into a small apartment near campus. Nothing fancy, just mine. The fallout wasn't loud. It never is. People didn't scream. They adjusted. My mom stopped calling after the 3rd unanswered message. Richard never tried again. A few relatives reached out, careful words, careful questions. I didn't explain much. I didn't need to. I started college in the fall. New city, new routine, new silence. But this one was different. This one didn't feel like something I had to maintain. It felt like something I was allowed to have. 6 months later, I got a message from my mom. Just 3 words. "I miss you." I stared at it for a long time. Then I locked my phone. Some things take longer than a message. 1 year later, on my 19th birthday, I sat by a window in my apartment, rain tapping softly against the glass. Laptop open, trust statement on the screen. Everything stable, everything secure, everything mine. I reached into my drawer, pulled out my dad's letter, read the last line again. "Don't ignore your instincts," I smiled. I didn't. There are 2 kinds of quiet daughters. The ones who stay quiet and the ones who leave quietly. People confuse them all the time. If you made it this far, I want to ask you one thing. If you were sitting at that table, a.m., pancakes in front of you and a pen in your hand, what would you have done? Signed? waited, or walked.